Well, if you're going to stay with me to learn a little bit of Spanish, you should probably get yourself 4 sheets of paper, or better yet, in your notes, start on the section that's been waiting for you that says Spanish. It would be page 11.1, the 11th section, first page. Now, the year that this girl took her notes and left them behind for me, it was the 8th section, page 1. And there on the top, you should have Spanish. And you could underline it. Now on that page, we're mostly going to get things ready in this video. On that page, you could skip a line and then write down I start to say it in Spanish, pronunciación. That would have been French. Well, anyway, we're going to write it in English. Pronunciation. A mistake that a lot of English speakers make is they want to call that pronunciation because you pronounce words, but the noun is pronunciation. I'm going to give you certain rules for pronouncing Spanish. Then go halfway down the page, more or less, maybe not quite, halfway down the page and write down nouns. As I give you these words, as we deal with this silly conversation, I'm going to pull words out by parts of speech. We're going to keep a list of nouns. All right, that gets that page ready. Now if you'll go on to the back of that page, and usually I don't do this, I usually have things written out, but today I'll do it the way I usually would teach it. On the back of that, in the upper left-hand corner, this would be page 11.2. This would be the back. And on this page, here in her case, it was 8.2. We're going to get 3 sections ready, all the way over to the left. Write down adjectives. You could just go ADJ. That would be fine if you've taken the course. Then about halfway down the page, not quite halfway down the page, about a third of the way down, put down adverbs. And then divide the area that you've got left in half and put down... what did I do that year? I did conjunctions next. CJ. Those are the abbreviations that I'm using. So that'll be that page. Now, if you'll look on the right-hand side of your notes, upper right-hand corner, there you would write, this is going to be page 11.3. And on this page, we're going to keep a list of, I'll do it the same as I did that year, interjections, IJ, or you could say interjections, but if you've been with this class, you should know that that means interjections. And this is a set of notes, remember. Then, not quite halfway down the page, about a third of the way down the page, write down preps or prepositions, and then divide the area that you've got left in half and put down PN. Pronouns. All right, that page is ready, and we will sort words out as we go. We're mostly getting ourselves ready. All right, that takes care of 7 of the parts of speech. If you'll turn that piece of paper over now, and on the back of it you would write 11.4. This entire page I'm going to devote to verbs. Verbs. I suppose right along I should have been using a colon to say here comes the list. The next page, on the right, as you look at there's verbs. On the right, as you look at your notes. This would be page 11.5. And this entire page I'm going to devote to what are called inflections. I wrote that out because that word you're not so likely to be familiar with unless you've studied some linguistics. Let's even put in here IE, an abbreviation which means that is word endings. Word endings. In many languages, inflections become very important. They're important in English, but they're even more important in these other languages. All right, if you'll go on to the back of that now, this would be there you could put down in the upper left-hand corner 11.6. And here comes our first Spanish word. Conversación. Conversación. And what I would do with my students, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this with this class, but I would say it, and then I would say, now you say it after me, and say it together. Conversación. And the class would say it back. I became almost like a choir director, and if they didn't say it right together, one kid would usually come in late. I'd say, no, do it together. Conversación. And if they would do it together, I could listen. And if there were some student in there, I wouldn't single the kid out, but I'd say, no, it's not shh, as it's not conversation. Conversation. I'm getting mixed between the two. I would listen, and I could pick it out. The conversation. Some students want to say conversation or something. Anyway, on the top of the page, let's write that word down. Conversación. Conversación. And I would always say it and have them say it. Hear it and then say it before I would let them see it. Because as soon as they saw that, they're going to want to say it like English. That's called a cognate. And I won't teach about cognates today, but I probably will tomorrow. Conversación española. Española. And I'd listen. Well, then I would write that down. Española. Conversación española. And then they would write it, and we could underline it, I suppose, because that's the title of this section. And then I'd ask, what do you suppose that means? And some of them would want to say Spanish conversation. And I'd say, well, yes, but word by word, what does it mean? What do you suppose conversación means? And they would say conversation. And underneath it, I would challenge them to not write it down. I'd say, if you know that, if it's obvious to you, and you don't need to write the English, then don't write it. And what do you suppose Española means? And they would probably figure out that meant Spanish. Now in English, you have to capitalize that. In Spanish, you do not. Being at the top of the page, you probably would capitalize it. But I like to not capitalize it as a way of immediately trying to teach that it's a difference. This is what's called a proper adjective. And in English, a proper adjective, like a proper noun, you capitalize it. Not so in some other languages. And I also like to point out that literally this doesn't mean Spanish conversation. And it's not conversation in Spanish. It's conversation Spanish. And tomorrow, not today, this is enough for today. Tomorrow, I'll point out that there is the order that you would normally put an adjective and a noun together with. Okay, we're started, and I think that's quite enough for today. See you tomorrow.